Welcome everyone to another episode of Pop Rant Radio, the podcast where two pop culture junkies discuss popular and sometimes not so popular culture. My name is Moss, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is my good friend and co-host, Eric. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great, how are you?
Good, feeling better?
Feeling quite a bit better.
You had bronchitis.
I did have bronchitis.
It was super serious.
And I stuck through it for all of you.
We didn't know at the time that you had bronchitis.
No, I didn't even know.
So, Hollywood recently, and for basically the entire time that Hollywood's been around, but especially recently, we've been seeing a lot of reboots and remakes of...
And reimaginings.
And reimaginings of films and franchises. Disney's been doing a lot of converting their classic animated stuff into live action.
And then converting their live action into live action.
And
like redoing it.
All sorts of stuff. So today we wanted to talk about movies, either individual films or film franchises that we think actually deserve to be rebooted or remade.
Top 6 movies we think should be remade or redone.
It's got to be a list.
Should we do the number 6?
So to start things off, I just kind of wanted to give an example of a movie that I think was actually a really successful like reboot / reimagining, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
And that was Mad Max Fury Road. Fury Road was...
Well, that's a sequel.
Yeah, but it's a sequel / reimagining.
What about Dredd? Did you see Dredd?
I did see Dredd. I thought Dredd was okay.
It was better than Judge Dredd.
It was way better than the Sylvester Stallone movie. Like I think Carl Urban. Wow, that's a hard name to say. Keith Urban.
I think Keith Urban did great in that movie.
I think Carl Urban did a really good job in that movie. Like they never took off the helmet.
Right.
You know, he was always, you know, Judge Dredd. They didn't have to like show, oh, it's actually Carl Urban.
Right, and there's no
right.
Of the whole movie.
We don't have any Stallone or Armand Asante
or Rob Schneider.
Or Rob Schneider.
Just Rob Schneider, period.
Yes, that was all right. Like specifically with Fury Road, I think that they took the elements that really worked from the original Mad Max movies.
Dangerous stunts.
You know, just like this Pokemon movie. This post-apocalyptic environment, this setting, but they really used all of these excellent filmmaking techniques and like stunt coordination and minimalism CGI or very well blended CGI with traditional effects to kind of produce this fantastic film, this fantastic...
Yeah, they really revved it up to like modern era stuff.
Absolutely. It's this awesome thrill ride, but it tells this coherent, albeit simple story. Yeah. But they did it really, really well. It's awesome.
Yeah, it essentially boils down to a chase.
Yeah.
It's one car chase.
It's a chase movie, and that's kind of an example of what I want to do today is talk about movies or franchises from the past that either they didn't do very well at the box office, or maybe they had a good idea but didn't really capitalize on it, poor execution, that sort of thing. So the first film franchise that I want to talk about is Highlander.
Right.
And for those not familiar, Highlander was...
Has the best sequel ever?
Highlander 2 is, we generally consider it one of, if not the worst film ever made.
Right.
And we'll have to talk about the Highlander series in depth one day because
we'll have to sit down and watch them first.
Well, you haven't seen them. I've seen all of them except the 5th one, the made-for-TV sci-fi channel.
The Revenant?
The Revenant, yeah. Starring Leonardo DiCaprio.
Highlander 5, The Revenant.
The Source. That's what it's called. The Source.
It's like a BBC made-for-TV movie.
Sci-Fi Channel.
Even worse.
Sci-Fi original.
Even worse.
So for those of you not familiar, the Highlander movie series started in the 80s, starring Christopher Lambert.
Right.
Mr. I have to whisper everything in my French accent.
Eddie Redmayne.
I'm Connor MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod.
You are my daughter, Jupiter.
People won't even be able to tell if that's a clip or if that was just me.
They'll be like, whoa, that was so good. Are you in the movie?
I'm Christopher Lambert. Spoiler alert.
This podcast just lost a lot of viewers. Listeners. Damn it.
Something.
It lost a lot of people.
So the basic premise of the movies was there are these beings who are immortal, and the only way that the immortals can be killed is if their head is cut from their body. The main character, played by Christopher Lambert, is Connor MacLeod, and he is born in the Scottish Highlands and like
Fox's dad.
Yes, Fox.
Oh, his granddad. No, because his dad is James.
It's actually MacLeod, so it's MAC.
Oh, yeah. So it's like a distant relative.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. This is before they changed the name after they came to America.
Right. So it takes place in Corneria. Like there's like 5 people that are gonna catch Corneria.
We made a Star Fox reference last week.
Did we really?
Weren't we talking about Andros?
What's his face? Looks like Andros.
Tarak looks like Andros from Star Fox.
Well, there you go, 2 for 1.
Way off topic. Connor MacLeod is born in the Scottish Highlands in I don't know exactly when. He is part of this Scottish Highland clan. He gets killed, and seemingly, but the next day he wakes back up and he doesn't have any injuries, and all the people in his village think, oh, you're some sort of demon or monster. So they banish him from the village. He eventually meets Sean Connery's character. We'll just call him Ramirez. He has a really long name. He has 17 names, but we'll just call him Ramirez. And Ramirez basically explains to him, you are an immortal. The only way you can be killed is if your head is cut from your body. You're going to have these powers, and you're going to be in pursuit of the prize.
Right.
And the prize is, once all of the immortals are killed, the last immortal will gain the prize. And hence,
there can only be one?
Right. Hence the famous phrase, there can be only one. There can be only one immortal. And
only if there could be only one Highlander.
And it's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. It has an awesome soundtrack. Queen did the entire soundtrack for the movie. That's where
Flash Gordon?
The song I Am an Immortal, it comes from that movie. It was originally written for the soundtrack. Rest in peace, Freddie Mercury, of course.
Yes.
And
recently deceased Freddie Mercury.
Recently deceased. Well, we recorded this podcast, when did he die?
1993?
Oh, yeah, the 3 months before we recorded this podcast, yeah.
Yes.
Connor MacLeod, you get to watch him, live his life, and he witnesses all these great events throughout the history of the world. He's present during World War I and World War II and the French Revolution. Yeah, basically he's Wolverine. That scene in the beginning of Wolverine Origin.
We're not talking about that.
Right, but the only decent part in the entire movie where you see him and Sabretooth going through the eras of history.
You didn't like Will.i.am as Spectre?
Oh, God. That's essentially what the movie is. You get to watch him go through his life and all these different times. And the movie kind of touches on the idea that Connor MacLeod is an immortal. And because he's going to essentially live forever, he's going to lose the people that he loves because he's going to continue living while they die. He has a wife in the Scottish Highlands, and she grows old and she dies. And he kind of vows to himself that he's not going to fall in love again. And the movie takes place in the modern day, which is 1984 or 86 or whenever the first movie came out. And he falls in love again with this woman who discovers who he is, who discovers that he has lived this big, long life, because what he keeps doing is he creates new birth certificates and that sort of thing, and he essentially, when his persona, quote unquote, dies, he leaves his inheritance to his new persona.
So kind of like Vandal Savage?
Kind of, yeah, in the same way. So his new persona is Russell Nash. Terrible 80s movie name. You could totally see Russell Nash being an Arnold Schwarzenegger character, a la Last Action Hero.
Either that, or I can imagine Lemmy from Motorhead. It's long curly black hair, a
Russell Nash.
I don't care. Another beer.
So anyway, the movie, it takes place in 1986 or whatever, New York, and that's where The Gathering is happening, which is where all the immortals will come together and fight each other for the prize. And the first movie's kind of vague on what the prize is. Spoilers, Connor MacLeod wins the prize at the end of the movie.
What?
And I think there might be multiple cuts of this movie, I don't know, but the prize essentially at the end is he gains all knowledge of the universe. It's just kind of vaguely magical.
It's a cop-out.
Yeah. The movie's kind of charming. Again, it's not perfect. I like the idea that Connor MacLeod in the movie, he saves this little girl in World War II from getting killed by a Nazi.
Easy.
And he raises her, and she kind of becomes his secretary in his modern life. And she knows his secret, and she's kind of in love with him, but he doesn't return the feelings. And when he originally finds her, she watches him get shot by an enemy soldier, and he doesn't die. And she's like, well, how is this possible? And there's this really charming line where Connor goes, it's a kind of magic. And it's indicative of the film that the film kind of has this magical charm to it. And again, film's not perfect by any means, but I really like the concept of Highlander, that there's these immortals and they can only be killed in this giant competition between them if their heads are cut from their body. And the whole movie is based around sword fighting, classic sword fighting.
Right.
It's just this really kind of cool, modern, quote unquote, modern day fantasy that has this really cool premise, and the movie just wasn't handled very well. And especially in the sequels just kind of go way off the rails, especially the second one. cool concept that if it was given to a decent director today, could be kind of turned into like this fun, but also kind of grim fantasy where you focus on the idea that there's this immortal character that he's going to lose the ones that he loves as they get older and die. And you can really explore the theme of what does it mean to be immortal and what does it mean to outlive all the people that are important in your life.
Who would you give it to direct?
That's a really good question.
I'm going to ask you this after everyone.
That's fine. I'm going to do the same to you.
No, you can't. It's my question. You asked me who would do the soundtrack for mine.
I don't know who would be a great director. Like, I don't know if there is a specific person that I have in mind to direct.
Wes Anderson?
Definitely Wes Anderson.
Wes Anderson presents Highlander.
I would definitely see that movie.
I actually kind of would too. I imagine it'd be amazing. Starring Owen Wilson and Bill Murray.
I don't think it would be proper to give it to like Tarantino, but I think he could do something kind of interesting with the premise.
Okay.
But I'd probably, if I had to choose, I'd go with
Shyamalan.
Definitely Shyamalan.
Dude, it kind of feels like a Shyamalan kind of concept film that he would do.
Who would I give it
But he would fuck it up.
I'm just gonna give it to David Fincher.
Yeah, I was gonna say, half our movies here are gonna be David Fincher.
I don't know. I'd probably give it to like somebody who directed a good episode of Game of Thrones or something. I don't really have anybody specific in mind. Yeah, basically just anybody who would be competent in like a fantasy type. Because a lot of the original movie, and I would imagine a lot of a reboot or a remake would take place in different time periods.
Right.
So someone who was kind of competent at doing period piece films,
Sure.
but also has a little bit of a background in action. But I really would want the remake to be a little bit more character and story driven than the original one was. Because again, the original one has this great idea and it just doesn't effectively go anywhere with it. The movie just kind of like meanders along until the action scene at the end. So what's the first one you want to talk about?
Okay, so first one I want to talk about, it's kind of, it's not necessarily a specific piece, but I would love to see more of Isaac Asimov's stuff done.
Like iRobot.
Right, iRobot is the one I was actually going to more so just specifically talk about. So Isaac Asimov was a very famous sci-fi writer. He's actually very well known for writing the rules of robotics, the laws of robotics.
Yeah, Asimov's laws of robotics.
Which are constantly referenced, constantly used in sci-fi throughout time.
Right, and it's just so for everyone's reference.
The first one is that a robot cannot cause harm to a human being or let a human being come to harm.
Right, allow a human being to be harmed.
The second rule is that a robot must follow every order that it is given as long as it does not break the first law. And the third law is a robot must protect its existence as well as other robots' existences as long as it does not break the first or second law.
So don't allow harm to come to humans.
Yep.
Obey orders of humans as long as it doesn't break the first law.
Right.
And then prevent harm to yourself and other robots as long as it doesn't break the first two laws.
Right.
Check.
So that's it. Awesome. Sets the ground framework for tons of androids and robots throughout sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, and really simple and really streamlined, and like you mentioned, referenced countless times in science fiction pop culture.
Oh yeah. Classic stuff like Ray Bradbury references it a lot.
Philip K. Dick.
Yeah. So one of his biggest pictures is iRobot. I'm going to talk about the remake more so than the original.
The 2005.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are more familiar with it.
I think it was 2005. Anyway, the Will Smith
early
movie.
2000s Will Smith.
Yeah.
So the story is essentially Will Smith is a detective in the future. It's kind of a distant future. Robots are very well incorporated into life. Buildings are huge. Cars are automated drive. Distant future.
The future.
Fantastic.
Buildings are huge.
Buildings are huge. That's all you need to know about them. So Will Smith gets called in to investigate at a robotics, I think it's a robotics designing facility.
Yeah, it's like a laboratory or facility.
One of the head scientists, one of the guys that runs the AI design, is found dead. Will Smith goes up to investigate it, goes in the room where he supposedly throws himself from, and finds, hiding in the shadows, a new modeled AI 5 called Sonny.
Robot.
So,
yeah.
Right. A new robot called Sonny. And so, of course, Sonny immediately becomes the prime suspect.
Right. And
He's the only person in the room the whole time that this guy's in the room, from when he gets there in the morning to when he's thrown out.
And also an important factor is that Will Smith's character has a predisposition against robots.
Yes, you find that out slowly throughout the film, that there was a time where Will Smith gets in a car accident. and there's a young girl. They're both, his car and another car are thrown into this river, and they're both slowly draining into the river. And a robot jumps in and goes to Will Smith's car and like shatters his window. And Will Smith is like, "No, go save her. She's younger. I'm a cop. I can get out." And the robot says, "No, the probability of your survival is, 80-something%. Probability of hers is 12. She's gone."
Right.
And he gets really pissed off because she's a girl who's maybe 9 years old.
So she was sacrificed in order to save him.
Right.
And the robot, quote unquote, made that decision.
And it's kind of hinted at, I know, in the book. I don't think it is too much in the movie. It's kind of hinted at that it's his fault, even.
Gotcha.
That he is driving intoxicated, and he constantly throughout the film, as well as at this moment, takes manual control of his car, which is forbidden at this point because cars drive themselves.
Gotcha.
So he takes control of his car on this night while being intoxicated and hits her car. They both go over.
Gotcha. So it's his fault.
It's his fault.
And he gets saved.
Right.
So he feels the guilt. And
yeah, so he's got double guilt.
Double guilt.
It's
1984. It's double plus guilt.
It's that Nickelodeon show, Double Dare, Double Guilt.
We'll get into.
So he has this hatred towards robotics. And the story kind of goes on and on. He gets to know Sonny more, and the whole suspect of like, how could this guy have broken through his window? It's bulletproof glass. It had to be the robot, but how could Sonny do it? Because
all the facts kind of point to Sonny being responsible for the doctor's death.
Right. And it keeps on going forward, and you slowly start to see that other robots are breaking the laws of robotics as well. They're attacking Will Smith. They're doing shenanigans. Who knows? But the big thing is, it turns out that the core AI that was designed by the scientist discovers that like the plans set forward by the facility are going to constantly make robots insufficient with next coming models.
Okay.
So they're constantly throwing aside robot life, throwing them into canisters and like throwing them into like garbage areas.
So causing harm to robots.
Right, they're throwing them away. They're useless because they're getting upgraded every so often.
Mm-hmm.
So this core AI says, well, hey, there's like a glitch in her system where she's able to follow Rule 3 predominantly. She switches Rule 3 with Rule 1 and makes it that, hey, now I have to protect the lives, quote unquote, of all these robotics that are being tossed aside. So she, while infiltrating all the minds of the new AI 5-like models of the robots, has them switch their laws, and they're going to cause like this uprising.
Gotcha. So it's robot revolution.
Right. But it's really well thought out. Like there's no clear-cut villain.
Right. It's kind of the villain, quote unquote, is almost like the malfunction of technology that was designed by humans.
Right. Because it is the laws. It's law number. It's just that main idea that she switches law 3 and 1. Protect yourself. Protect others like you. And law 1 being don't harm humans. She all of a sudden is, my main prerogative is to save robots.
Mm-hmm.
Her name is Vicky, I think. It's either Vicky or Edie or something like that. No, Edie's Mass Effect. It's Vicky, I'm pretty sure. So it's really good, and I think the movie that Will Smith is in isn't necessarily bad.
It's all right. It's kind of like a generic like Hollywood action movie.
Yeah, and that's the problem. I think that it was kind of, they just slapped the name iRobot on it and just made a sci-fi action movie.
Yeah.
I would love to see this be done by Alex Garland, who just got done doing Ex Machina, which was fantastic.
Great movie.
I would love to see this be done as a smarter film. Cover more so like, we create this, go with the more human side of it.
Right.
Like,
it's an examination of, and this is kind of going to come into play really soon, just in reality, in real life, where we're eventually going to develop artificial intelligence that can identify itself or has quote unquote consciousness, and it really raises the issue of ethics and morality in regards to machines and artificial intelligence.
Right. I mean, I saw the other day they were talking about programming a smart car that drives itself, and in the case that people are crossing the street, and the only way to not injure people crossing the street, it would have to turn to a meridian, but that would then injure the driver. What does the car do? Does it put the driver at risk, or does it put the bystander at risk?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just these questions, and these questions have no easy answer. In fact, I don't think there's an answer to them, period. It's just a morality question. It's what do you do in that split-second reaction?
Right, and that idea can be very interesting, explored in a film.
Right, and that's what I love about Ex Machina, is Ex Machina kind of holds that idea back from you the whole time without giving anything away. there's a lot of backstabbing throughout the movie from multiple characters.
Right, and not to spoil anything, but you get to the end of the movie and all of the expectations that you had are kind of shifted, and the movie kind of pulls a 180 on you.
Yeah, it puts you on your head, essentially.
Yeah, and it kind of punches you in the gut with this question of, well, who is right and who is wrong, and there is no easy answer.
Right, and that's what I think a remake of iRobot could really try to cover. You know, is Vicky, or whatever the hell the AI's name is she malicious, or was the doctor that created her malicious, or is the company malicious, or is the AI 5s that are attacking, you know, Will Smith? That's another thing that kind of ruined in the movie is they have the AI 5s going and destroying the AI 4s in one scene, or like beating them up or something, and it makes no sense. It's kind of just there to villainize the AI 5s, which you don't need to do. Like, you just got to be smarter than that. But it's this big question, and you don't need this villain, and that's what I kind of love the idea of that the original story proposes, is that, you know, who is the villain? It's kind of up to you to decide.
So the next film that I want to talk about is actually an adaptation from a comic book. Came out in 2010. Not very good. Not good at all. Not well received. Just kind of disappeared entirely.
Not starring Ashton Kutcher, as I thought.
Not starring Ashton Kutcher. I'm having a real problem with stuff today.
You are like slipping on words, and I'm over here coughing.
It's so bad. Not starring Ashton Kutcher. It was 2010's Jonah Hex.
Right.
And most people have probably not seen nor heard of this movie. But
most people probably don't know who the character is anymore.
Yeah. So the movie Jonah Hex essentially was about this bounty hunter cowboy. Takes place in the Wild West. Jonah Hex is a bounty hunter. He was played by Josh Brolin in the movie. And Jonah Hex's defining feature is that half of his face is severely burned and scarred. Think kind of like Sandor Clegane in Game of Thrones, The Hound, but a little bit even worse than that.
Yeah, it's because Sandor Clegane's is from
his brother
pushes his face in the fire. Is that
right.
what it is?
So he's a very intimidating character. He's a very intimidating presence, and he's a bounty hunter in the Wild West, and he kind of has this like sarcastic, devil-may-care attitude, but he's also kind of charming as well.
Right.
So the movie, again, is kind of this generic Hollywood action movie. The plot's pretty terrible, and the biggest sin I think that the movie creates, other than just not being very good,
casting Megan Fox.
Is that they skip over Jonah Hex's origin story, which is by far the most interesting thing about his character.
Right.
So Jonah Hex, he's born pre-American Civil War.
Right.
His father is a drunk and abusive. His father sells Jonah into slavery, basically, to the Apaches. The Apaches at first kind of treat him pretty poorly, make him do a lot of manual labor, and one day Jonah saves the chief from a mountain lion. So the chief adopts him as his son, and everything's good at first, but the chief's actual son, whose name is No Tante, I think, sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, is jealous of Jonah's relationship with his father, the chief.
Right.
No Tante and Jonah fall in love with the same woman, whose name is White Fawn. Through happenstance, No Tante betrays Jonah. Jonah gets captured by a rival Native American tribe. Left for Dead gets captured by a Native American tribe. The cavalry eventually shows up, saves Jonah. Now that we've saved you, we're going to slaughter all these Indians. And Jonah's like, no, don't do that. Like, I'm safe.
You know, classic American story.
Yeah, so Jonah tries to prevent at least the just absolute murder of these people. The cavalry turns against him, shoots him. He wanders off into the wilderness. He's eventually found by a Native American trapper who raises him back to health, kind of teaches him a few things. Jonah goes off, joins the U.S. Army, eventually ends up on the side of the Confederacy. While he's in the Confederate forces, he meets this other soldier named Jeb Turnbull, and they become really good friends. The Civil War breaks out. The Emancipation Proclamation is announced by Abraham Lincoln. Jonah decides that he is going to abandon the Confederacy because he doesn't believe in slavery.
Right.
And he's just going to kind of like wait out the war. So he walks to a Union fort and turns himself into the fort's captain. And the captain says, well, I'm glad that you turned yourself in. Where are your allies? Like, where are the other Confederate forces? And Jonah's like, nope, I'm not going to tell you because those are my friends. Well, one of the other soldiers figures out, based upon like the dirt and mud that's on Jonah's...
horse's
horse's hoof. Oh, they must be over here at this place. So the Union forces go, capture all of the Confederate forces, Jonah's friends, and they hold them in jail, essentially. Jonah and the other guys, they work out an escape route. They discover this tunnel, and they try to get out, but it was all a ruse by the captain because the captain wants to justify killing the Confederate soldiers because there's a food shortage, and if they were, quote, trying to escape, he can kill them all and no harm, no foul. They end up killing the captain, but the Union forces, they don't know that it was the captain that kind of set everything up.
Right.
So they kill all of the Confederate soldiers, but Jonah gets away. Jeb Turnbull's father, Jonah's friend's father, whose name I don't remember, but they call him Turnbull in the comic, he ends up becoming like Jonah's arch nemesis because through his actions, Jonah got Jeb killed and his father wants revenge against him. Jonah eventually goes back to the village of his old Apache tribe where Nontante has married White Fawn, and the chief is like, I can't believe you came back. What happened? And Jonah says, your son betrayed me. And Nontante's like, no, he's a liar. And the chief is like, well, the only way to settle this is for you two to fight each other in combat. The rules are you can only use your hatchets. That's it. Nontante sabotages Jonah's hatchet. So during the fight, he has to pull out his knife. So he has to cheat. He has to break the rules of combat. And he kills Nontante. But the chief says, you've brought dishonor to this fight, takes the hatchet, puts it in the fire, and then the heated hatchet head, he presses up against Jonah's face, giving him the iconic scar. The iconic scar. I think they even call it like the demon mark in the comic. So Jonah has this amazing backstory where he joins the Confederate Army, he quits, he accidentally betrays his friends. Like there's all these really great things that happen to him. He's this incredibly interesting character, and then eventually he becomes bounty hunter, and he's a total badass.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about the
animated short.
Yeah, the animated short. They did an animated short for Jonah Hex,
and it's just tacked on.
Right.
It's like this 4-part.
Yeah,
film.
DC released like this collection of like 10 to 12 minute like shorts, and it's just one of them in there. There's like a Green Arrow one, there's like a Shazam one, or a Captain Marvel one rather. Thomas Jane, who played the Punisher in the movie with John Travolta, the really bad one. But anyway, Thomas Jane plays the voice of Jonah Hex in this animated short, and it's amazing.
It's so good.
It's like 12 minutes long, and it's so awesome. We were
quoting it upstairs because it opens with him riding into town, and there's this kind of like little kind of piece of crap kid hanging out in front of the saloon. He's kind of like twirling a pistol or whatever, trying to act tough, and Hex just walks up to the saloon, and the kid recognizes him, and he goes, hey, I know you! You're that Jonah Hex guy! And Jonah just goes, congratulations. No missed beat.
Doesn't even look at him.
Right, he just keeps walking forward.
And then there's that really great line where it ends up that he's chasing after like a prostitute. She tries to seduce him at first, and then when they go up to the room, they end up getting into a fight, and she goes, you wouldn't hit a lady, would you? And he's like, you're no lady.
You ain't a lady.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's really, and just like Dexter. Yeah. So Jonah, anyway, long story short, Jonah's this kind of really interesting character with this really interesting backstory, and the movie that they came out with in 2010 just completely glosses over his entire origin, which is the coolest part about his character.
From what it sounded like, it kind of felt like they looked at one like Jonah Hex comic that came out like that week maybe and just like wrote it off that. Bounty Hunter, Old West, done.
Yeah, and they just turned it into a generic Hollywood action movie.
Crap flick.
So again, same idea. Like I would imagine this, somebody who directed Deadwood, essentially. Like any episode of Deadwood, that's how I kind of picture this. Like I picture the vibe and the tone very reminiscent of the HBO show Deadwood.
Or it's the guy that directed the short, whoever he is.
Yeah, whoever did that. Or he or she, absolutely.
Yep. Grab whoever it is, just get them on it. ASAP. So the second one I kind of wanted to bring up is kind of one that a lot of people, it's both my second and third one have the same problem. It's something that's still going on right now, but in a wrong way, or a wrong path that I think it needs to. So it might be something we gotta stop, take 10 steps back, and try again.
10 steps, wow.
10 steps back, yes. So my first one is Alien. I loved the original Alien. I love Aliens. I know a lot of people talk that like, you know, Alien to Aliens is like good to great. I don't think so. I think Alien is better than Aliens.
I agree, the original is the best.
It's just the atmosphere of Alien
is
perfect at times. The close quarters, the weird gothic looking ship, the red light, that alarm that goes through half that movie, everything is like super spot on with that.
And I think that Giger's design of the alien and the ships and everything is most influential in that film and suits the tone of the original movie more so than the sequels. Not that the sequels are bad. Well, they start getting bad.
Yeah, they for sure do.
But yeah, his designs of the alien and the ships and everything just really complement the tone and the direction that Ridley Scott took the original Alien.
Right, and it's like nothing against like Prometheus. Prometheus is, I think, okay. It's not great, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be.
I do not like it.
I think it's all right. I think it's fine.
There's parts that are okay.
Yeah, it so misses the point of Alien, and that is just a because so plot of Alien, if you don't know it, like this ragtag group stumble upon this ship that's just like obliterated. Yeah,
they're like space truckers. They're like transporting cargo across the galaxy or whatever you want to call it. The space.
Yep.
The space.
Yep, the space. There's one giant sign hanging out there.
Welcome to the space.
Right. Of course, with Sigourney Weaver. And while they're on the ship, stuff starts to happen, and you start to figure out that whatever caused this is still here, and it knows where, like, it's hunting them the whole time.
Right.
And that is what I think not only Alien films, but other horror films really miss, is this true feeling of hopelessness as the thing that's going to kill you very easily can. It knows where you're at, and it's just kind of waiting.
Especially in the original movie, it's the situation that these guys, they're basically just space truckers. Like, they don't have any weapons. They don't have any
Which they
guns.
kind of ruin that in the future films when you have, like, the smart gun.
Yeah. The idea in the first movie is that there's one xenomorph. There's one alien.
Yes.
And it's terrifying. And it's almost invincible. Like, it's this unstoppable killing force. They do a lot with lighting where it's always, like, portrayed in the shadow, or it's hanging from the rafters or that sort of thing. And it's just this terrifying force of nature that they have no idea what's going to happen next.
And it is technically like a slasher film. But the slasher is not just a dumb killer like Jason or, Michael Myers. It is an animal that is thinking very animalistically.
Yeah, and
it's hiding in the rafters. It's hiding in the floorboards. It's crawling through the shadows, waiting for you to step too far into it.
Yeah, and it's a slasher film, but it achieves this level of atmosphere and design that brings it to a whole other level. Again, like when this movie came out, there was nothing like this.
Right. I remember as a kid, I saw they were re-releasing it. They were releasing like a trilogy box set. And I remember on the box set, they showed the trailer for Alien. And just like, even right now, like, go watch that trailer if you haven't seen it.
It's still a great trailer.
It's amazing. Yeah. It doesn't show you anything of, like, importance, but it gives you enough where you're just like, this looks freaky.
And it has the classic line, in space, no one can hear you scream.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
And it's so well thought out and so calculated. Half the time, I was, like, half paying attention to, wow, the set looks really great. Wow, the hallway is really thin. That would be really inconvenient. And then just, like, boom, it shows up, and I'm like, oh, I'm not even paying attention to the story.
Right. And the pacing is fantastic as well. Like, it's a slow build, and then things slowly start to happen, and then it's kind of a roller coaster right at the end. Several years ago, I watched the audio commentary for this movie with Ridley Scott, and again, slight spoilers at the end of the movie, when it's just Ripley, Sigourney Weaver's character, she goes to the, like, escape pod that she's going to get out on, and then she realizes that she has to go all the way back into the middle of the ship to, like, flip this switch, and then she has to get all the way back to the escape pod. And in the scene, Ridley Scott was talking about, I originally thought that I was just going to cut this down because we watch her go from one end of the ship to the other and then all the way back, but he kept it in the way that he edited it in its entirety, because you go on this, like, it's a small journey where you're with Ripley this entire time, and you really feel the terror of, I have to get through this entire ship. I mean, the pacing is just fantastic.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is I don't necessarily want a remake of Alien, because it's a good movie. Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be remade. But I'm not really liking the Prometheus take on it, and I know they're supposed to be prequels, and they're going to lead into it. That's fine. But I just want something of that atmosphere again. Those the closed, dark sets, the slow pace, the character-driven stuff, that actual sense of fear. Like, one of my favorite lines from it is when she finds the android completely destroyed, and
Yeah.
he's just laying there, and he's like, "Well, I'm not gonna lie to you, so I offer my condolences." Like, she just gets pissed because he's pretty much just saying, "Hey, I can calculate your chances, but instead of telling you that, I'm just gonna say, hey, I'm sorry."
Right. The only other movie in the franchise that I can think of that really tries to recapture the tone of the original is Alien 3, and directed by David Fincher. But that movie notoriously had huge production problems, and Fincher was really mad at 20th Century Fox, the studio, because they didn't give him a lot of control.
Right.
He was a first-time movie director. And Alien 3 is a movie that I really have a fondness for. I don't think it's a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. That's definitely part of it. But they call it the assembled cut, which is a little bit closer to Fincher's original vision as opposed to the theatrical version.
Right.
And again, even that is not perfect, but I can kind of see where what he was going for. He was trying to recapture that mood of the original where it's like, it's one alien and it's terrifying. And that's something, like you said, we haven't had since.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea that we revisit this universe, but we kind of go back to the roots of this super feeling of hopelessness and of dread.
Well, and just the way that like slasher films have kind of degraded nowadays is they've kind of become more satirical of themselves now.
Definitely.
Where you no longer root for the teenagers to get out of the house, you root for the guy to find them.
Yeah, you actively want them to die. And that's another big thing about horror movies, and specifically slashers, is that it's a lot of like carbon copy archetypical characters.
Right. There's the whore, there's the nerd, there's the jock, there's the prude girl, there's like the best friend. Like it's these 5 characters and you put them anywhere. Like that's why like Cabin in the Woods was so successful. It's because Cabin in the Woods takes that and it goes, "Stop it. Stop it right now. Look at this. This is great. It's a cliche. Cut it out. Write something else."
And another kind of good example of that, I think, was the movie The Strangers, which I ultimately didn't like at the end.
Oh yeah, the one based on the Manson case.
I guess I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it's the one where the guy's got the
they all
bag
have the
over his
masks.
head.
Yeah.
I think we're thinking of the same one. This is the one where she's like in the kitchen and he's just like standing in the living room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, like I really like that movie because at the very beginning, we're way off topic, by the way.
Yeah, but we could do a whole episode on how to fix horror.
For sure. But just really quick, because we brought it up, that movie has Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman, and they're like this couple in a relationship, and they're at a wedding, and as they're leaving, Scott Speedman like proposes to Liv Tyler, and she tells him no, and the drive back to their like cabin is super awkward, and the first like 20 minutes of the movie is just you learn who these people are, and you learn to give a shit about what they're doing and what they're going through. So when everything starts hitting the fan and those creepy people show up, you actually care what happens to these characters. And I don't even necessarily know if the original like Alien does that, because again, you kind of just get this group of people.
Yeah.
But I think it does a good job of throughout the movie, even after the alien attack starts, is you get, even if you don't get a sense of the individual characters themselves, you get a sense of the relationships between the different characters.
Well, but back then it was a different genre back then.
It was, and I think
back then we cheered for, we were cheering for Sigourney Weaver to get the hell off the ship.
Yeah.
Nowadays they would be cheering for, I hope the alien's in the pod waiting for her.
Right. And I think another brilliant piece of that movie is that Ripley is not the main character at the start of the film.
No, she's kind of thrust into it as the last survivor.
But she becomes the main character by virtue of being the last survivor.
Right, which is another great thing that movie does really well is she's not an action hero.
Right.
Like, which is what the second movie does. The second movie makes her an action hero.
In the first movie, she's a survivor. Right.
She's just trying to get out of there. I find a very good comparison, oddly enough, to recent Alien games. You have Alien Colonial Marines, which is a dumbed-down piece of shit shooter. Everyone hated it. Then you have Alien Isolation, a game that's more so focused on hiding. You can't fight the alien. You have nothing to fight him with.
Mm-hmm.
So your main goal is to hide in lockers, hide under tables, make a mad dash for the door if he's far enough away from you. Do anything in your means to survive. I think that's a great juxtaposition.
Right, and that's what made the original movie scary.
Right. So
who would direct?
Who would direct?
You're now getting back to reboots and remakes. Who would direct your Alien sequel / reimagining?
If it were to be remade, I would love to see Danny Boyle do it.
Ooh, that's a good answer.
And he did Sunshine, which was a really good sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's got Cillian Murphy and Chris Evans in it.
Yeah.
fantastic.
Chris Evans being awesome.
Yes.
He's so good.
He's like an asshole right off the bat, but then he's still just like really, really good throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, and Danny Boyle does a lot of other, like he did Slumdog Millionaire. That's another one he's really well known for. But yeah, I would love to see a Danny Boyle alien movie.
I think he truly understands like an idea of isolation, and I think he would really take that and kind of run with it.
So the final reboot / reimagining that I want to talk about is actually an adaptation of a novel, and that is George Orwell's famous novel 1984. It's actually been made into a movie at least twice, one in 1956, I think, and then once again in 1984.
Oddly enough.
And I haven't seen the one from 1956. I actually just watched the one from 1984 earlier today before you came over.
Right, I watched the end of it.
We finished it up together.
I haven't seen either.
And so I can't speak for the one from 1956. I've read online that one changes the ending, which, spoiler alert for 1984, I'm going to spoil everything here in a minute. So if you haven't read the book, read the book, because it's amazing. It is my favorite book of all time. Do yourself a favor. It's a great book.
I thought you said your favorite book of all time was Tale of Two Cities.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
The end.
The end.
We're going to hell. And...
That's the book, right? That quote's from?
Yes.
Okay.
Because that's what the first page is just positive, negative.
Gotcha.
Positive, because it's like a lot of us were going to heaven.
That's the entire book.
Others were going the other way.
There's 200 pages of that.
Yep.
Thanks, Dickens. But supposedly the 56 version changes the ending, which again, spoilers, the ending does not work out for the main characters of the book. So the ending to the 56 one is apparently like, yay, down with Big Brother, happy. The 84 one sticks way closer to the source material, although the 84 movie is grim and dark and kind of hopeless, which it should be.
Right.
But that's really all it is.
Yeah, you said it was kind of bland.
It's very bland. The whole movie is basically two people in a room talking exposition. Right. And the world of 1984, which I'll set up in a second, there's a lot of backstory and there's a lot of world building and background that's important to really understand the significance of the events that the book tells you about. The 84 movie tries to do that with voiceover, and it just really doesn't work. It's rough.
Right.
So if you haven't read it, the basic story of 1984 is the main character, who is Winston Smith, lives in this very dystopian, Orwellian, this is where that term comes from, dystopian future, where the government basically controls everything, and they control mass media, and they control everything that people see and hear. People aren't really allowed to be in love. Their emotions are kind of taken away from them. People in society are trained to hate the resistance, who is supposedly led by this character known as Goldstein, and there's some kind of subtext of...
Sounds like a dentist.
Yeah, it's like a Jewish name, and the subtext is like it's everybody's against.
I like how I went to dentist and you went to Jewish.
I'm just saying what Orwell intended, man. That's just the way it goes.
Essentially, I know we talked about this before upstairs. If you remember that famous Apple II commercial where it's, is it Microsoft? Is it a direct stab? I don't remember if it's a direct stab at Windows. I
don't remember. But anyway, it's the woman. She's running through like this
dystopian. Famous Olympian.
She's,
I think, like a shot put.
Something. Anyway, she has that spear or that pole that she it's a hammer that she throws into the giant screen on the wall that's talking to all these like zombified people. That's a direct reference to this book, 1984.
I don't even think it shows the computer. I think it just shows the Apple symbol.
The Apple symbol.
Says, thanks, we'll take your money now.
And so they have. So it's this dystopian future. That's the whole setup. Winston Smith works in what's called the Ministry of Truth, which ironically is an organization that goes and changes like newspaper articles and magazine articles, changes news stories to fit whatever the main party led by the figure led by the figure Big Brother. Again, that's where
quotes around truth. Like the Ministry of Truth.
So the party is supposedly led by Big Brother, and that's again where that term comes from, this like kind of all-seeing, overwatching eye that sees everything and everyone. He works for the Ministry of Truth, which is responsible for changing the news in articles and things like that to fit whatever the party's agenda is now.
Right.
So if the party decides, hey, we're going to go to war with this country, we've always been at war with this country, they alter all past media to always reflect that the party was always at war with this country.
Right.
So there's no discontent among the people because the party is quote unquote always right. The basic plot of the book, kind of very quickly, Winston meets this woman named Julia, who he initially hates, but then he figures out that she actually wants to sleep with him, which is totally against the rules as far as the party goes.
Right.
So they have to kind of go sneak off, and they end up having sex, and they end up falling in love. They have sex as kind of like a way to rebel against the rules of the party, to fight against abstinence, which the party is 100% all the way about.
Right.
And
do they ever explain why? Is it?
They do. They go into pretty big detail in the book.
Is it to control population, or is it?
It's basically to control people's emotions.
Okay.
If to suppress sex is to suppress one of the strongest desires that man and women have. Okay. So if they can control sex, they can control people's emotions. They go into a lot more detail in the book.
How do they multiply?
Well, they have people breed. Like,
okay.
The party marries people, but specifically for breeding. And, like, that's their sole purpose. Because Winston actually has a wife in the story before the story begins. And he thinks about her, and, like, he wasn't attracted to her. And they tried to have kids, but they couldn't. And eventually his wife was vaporized, which that's what happens to people in this universe, where if the party deems that people have outlived their purpose, they are vaporized. They're essentially erased from existence. And, again, anything that would reference them in the past, articles or whatever, is wiped clean. Hence Winston's job. And we get the point of view of Winston, and we kind of learn about this world through his eyes. So Winston and Julia end up meeting this guy named O'Brien, who also works at the ministry. Winston has the idea that O'Brien might be part of the resistance. They go to O'Brien's home, and O'Brien's like, yeah, I'm part of the resistance. I'm going to let you get in. But here's the thing about the resistance. Not everybody knows each other. Like, every person in the resistance knows like 2 or 3 other people, and that way it keeps everything safe. That way one person can't betray the entire movement.
Right. There's no jeopardizing.
Exactly. Julian and Winston know eventually they're going to get caught, because that's just the world they live in. And the novel does a really good job of building this kind of like hopelessness into this world, but there's a little bit of a light because they've finally joined the resistance. They're in love. Cool things are going well. Well, of course, they get caught. Winston gets taken to the Ministry of Love, which, again, ironically, is where they torture people. They torture who they deem criminals. As Winston's being tortured, he's not giving up any information about O'Brien or anybody else, but it turns out O'Brien is a traitor. He works for the party. He's actually the one doing the torturing, and O'Brien wants Winston to accept the party's rule, and it is kind of visualized and summed up in O'Brien tells Winston, if the party tells you that 2 + 2 = 5, then it equals 5. Winston initially resists, and no, 2 + 2 = 4, and O'Brien says, if the party tells you it equals 5, or if it equals 3, or if it equals 4, or if it equals all of them at the same time, you will accept that, because the party is essentially God.
It's indoctrination.
Exactly. The one thing that Winston promised Julia he wouldn't do, and she promised him that she wouldn't do, is betray each other's love. They say no matter what they do, no matter what they make us say, they can't stop us from loving each other. And it's also established in the novel that Winston is deathly afraid of rats. And so for the final torture, they take this cage of rats and they put it around Winston's head. And Winston at this point is like a broken shell of a man. Like, his hair's falling out. He hasn't eaten, so he's really thin.
Right.
Like, his teeth are falling out. Like, the novel goes into this great detail about how kind of disgusting and gross Winston has become. I mean, he's essentially being tortured and left for dead. Anyway, they put this cage of rats over his head, and right before things really hit the fan, Winston is like, no, don't do it to me. Like, do it to Julia. Just let me go. Like, do whatever you have to do to her, but stop. And it's this final betrayal. So they let Winston go back into society, but he's this broken man, and he actually ends up meeting Julia again, and she's also broken. Like, the same thing happened to her. And he admits to Julia that, hey, I betrayed you, and she admits to him, no, I betrayed you. That's how the party found out about his fear. His fear of rats is that she told them, and they used that against him. And that's how the novel ends. Like, the novel ends on this a down note. Like, right. The good guys lose, and they lose bad.
Just gutsy.
Yeah, it's amazing. And again, the novel doesn't pull any punches. Like, it takes these characters and it really like drags them through the filth. And that's why the novel is so great, is because it portrays this world where, hey, it's kind of like a warning sign of like when the government takes over and controls everything, bad things happen to people.
Right.
So anyway, this novel's been made into movies twice, but I don't think either one of them really capture what's so great about the novel. And I would really like to see an adaptation do a really accurate and well thought out adaptation and representation of what the themes and the storyline that the novel presents. The tough part about it is there's so much backstory and detail that's given to you in the novel, and a lot of it's in Winston's head. I think that would be kind of difficult to portray on film.
Yeah, you and I talked about possibly doing like a PSA or something that airs in the background, or
I think
or a newspaper or something.
Right.
Besides just doing a bland text crawl to start the film.
I think they would have to kind of get creative with providing audiences, a background narrative to the events that have happened, because a lot of the details are really important, and that's what makes the story so salient and the story so impactful, is that how this world works, and in the middle of the novel the party decides that they're at war with a different country than when the novel started, and you have to see Winston go through and change things, and you understand, oh, this is how the party works and this is how the party controls everything. And it would take some creativity to kind of portray all that in film and still make the film watchable and interesting.
Right.
But 100%, the person who I would want to direct this movie, and
M. Night Shyamalan.
Definitely.
You don't even have to finish that sentence.
End of the podcast. Thanks for listening. 100% David Fincher.
Yeah.
Fincher is the perfect person to build this world that's grim, but it's not disgusting, and it's not gross. It's not
just depressing.
It is depressing, and it's depressing, but it's portrayed as this paradise that the government has created, but it's all just...
It's very synthetic.
Yeah, that's a perfect word. It's synthetic. It's nice wallpaper over this foundation of terribleness.
Right.
And the novel starts off with this idea that the world is fake and the world is terrible, and it gives you this ray of hope in the relationship between Winston and Julia, and the fact that they think they're joining the resistance, which another part of the novel, it's unclear whether the resistance and Goldstein exist at all. They could be this fabrication of the party to root out people who are not full and indoctrinated. You don't know, and that's a brilliant part of the novel and the story. So I think Fincher would do a really good job of setting up this world, giving you this ray of hope, and then snatching it away from you, and ending on this just sour down note.
Well, and that's the thing that he's really good at, and he's not afraid to do either. He will go to a dark place that films other directors don't dare go to.
Yeah, for sure.
Like Seven, or
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which
Tattoo.
Obviously that's a remake, but he uses things he uses nudity in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable. It's not sexual at all, or in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, there's rape and it's uncomfortable to watch.
Right.
But he uses it to get you invested in the story and the characters. Or Gone Girl, again, spoilers for Gone Girl. The movie ends and the quote unquote bad guy wins. It's these two terrible people who have both done terrible things, and they're locked together and they can't get away from each other.
Because they have to sell it now.
Right. And it ends on this moment of nobody's happy. And that's how 1984 the novel ends. He would just be the perfect candidate to craft this film.
And that's I think that Hollywood would, if they put anyone else in it, I feel like we would get a very Hollywoodized,
for sure,
where in the ending, it probably ends with them holding hands.
Right. And
or some hopeful ending where it's we might get through it.
Right. In the 1956 film, it ends with the two main characters being down with Big Brother, down with Big Brother. And that misses the point of the novel entirely.
Right.
That's the complete antithesis of the point. And also the three movies that I think I'm talking about today, mass audiences aren't going to want to see these movies.
No one will see 1984.
And I get it. But I would still...
Except David Fincher. If you put David Fincher on, I think he will still attract a strong enough crowd.
That's a good point.
Because people will say, oh, it's the guy that did Fight Club.
Right.
Or, oh, it's the guy that did Gone
Seven,
Girl.
Gone Girl,
right.
his famous
I gotta
films.
see this.
Right. And Social Network. And I think that... I just think that he could craft this masterpiece of an adaptation.
Right.
Take all the things that make the novel so great, but infuse them with what makes his film so great. Oh, I just
that,
like
that Draper gray tone.
It's like my dream movie. It really is.
So my last one, like I said, with Alien, is a film that is still currently going on. I think we need to stop and jump back. And that is, oddly enough, to now kind of counteract the 1984, I would love to see Superman done correctly.
Wouldn't everyone?
Yes. I don't want a freaking dark Superman where he snaps Michael Shannon's neck and like cries in the camera. I was fine with that decision in Man of Steel, but I kind of just want, the Christopher Reeves smile at the camera, or like cracking a joke, or like I'm indestructible. Like I want that Superman.
Right. Superman is a big part of who he is the positive aspect of him.
He's the Boy Scout.
Yeah, his personality is he wants to save people, and like he kind of enjoys to some extent being a superhero.
Right. And that's why Superman from 78 it still holds up. It's still a good movie.
Right.
Because
the ending is terrible.
Yes, the ending is terrible, absolutely. He spins the world backwards.
But Christopher Reeve as Superman is like really embodies that character.
Right. I remember as a young kid watching that around the same time that I actually watched Batman, Tim Burton's 1989 Batman. And I just remember laughing at the scene where he's in the alleyway with Lois and the guy shoots him and he's like he catches it. Lois is like, Clark, are you okay? He's like, oh, ow.
Yeah.
Ooh. And it's like, that's Superman.
Yeah, he like catches the bullet and he's like, oh, must have missed. Right. I don't know. And he just tossed the bullet aside.
Yeah. He's not this dark, the bat is dead, bury it. Like he's not that. I want because that would make Batman 10 times better by comparison, because
right, Batman is the dark and brooding one.
When you make him the shining knight and you put him up against the Dark Knight, it emphasizes both of their characters.
I see what you did there.
Did you? You like that? But that's the thing. It's like when you have the Boy Scout go against the rule breaker, it makes their relationship that much stronger.
And it's compelling and it's interesting because it's opposites. It's these two competing personalities, and like that's what makes drama. Like
right.
That's how good stories are told.
And I think that's something that the superhero, not so much Marvel, I would say. Marvel films have a little bit of fun here and there, with like Ant-Man and Guardians of the Galaxy. We don't need these dark, drab movies for superheroes. And one of the characters that you don't make dark and drab is Superman.
More so than any other. Like
he's the golden boy. You don't mess with him. And that's why he's like the unbreakable pillar of the Justice League. He's this hero. And I want to see him, because you could still do the whole, spoiler alert for Batman v Superman, you can still do the whole death of Superman situation where he fights Doomsday, but I feel worse when it's a good guy who wants to just help people than a murderous hypocrite.
Right. The death of Superman doesn't have any weight if we as the audience don't like the character.
Right.
But specifically don't even care about the character at all, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy.
Right, and it's nothing against Henry Cavill. I think Henry Cavill would be a fantastic Superman if they fired every writer that DC's ever hired in the past 5 years. It's just we don't get a likable guy. There's no personality to it. He needs to be goofy. He needs to be clumsy. He needs to be, gung-ho about everything.
Right, and I've said it before, like, if you're going to license these characters, pull from the source material. Like,
right.
Superman has a personality. And if you're just going to completely warp and change it, what is the point?
He's just a little boy from Kansas, He's this little farm boy who's nerdy, and he gets to the city, and he wears glasses, and he hunches his shoulders, and, oh, I'm Clark Kent. Like, that's fantastic. Go with that. Like, we can't have him say, I'm Clark Kent anymore. Because he's got to be, I'm Clark Kent now. Like, sad. He's got to have, like, goth makeup on when he does it. Like, I just want, like, a Christopher Reeves. Like, even Brandon Routh was, I thought, pretty decent, like, remake of a Christopher Reeves Superman.
Right. Again, that movie has no good screenplay, no good script.
And that movie, like, goddamn that movie, because Brandon Routh's Superman is actually really good. Kevin Spacey, Lex Luthor, is genius. Like, that is such a perfect character to play Lex Luthor. Especially now after we have, like, House of Cards and stuff like that.
Sure.
Like, Frank Underwood from House of Cards is a more sane version of Lex Luthor.
You could argue that.
Right, like he is 100% about himself, and he doesn't care about who he's going to step on to get there. If we could go back in time and like destroy Bryan Singer's script for Superman Returns, and see, we can fix two things. We got two fixes here. We get him off Superman Returns. We get Ratman off of Last Stand. You fixed X-Men 3, you fixed Superman Returns. There you go. Go back in time and do both of those. But I want the hero back. Like, he's like Hercules, you know? He's the chest pound, like, nothing's going to stop Superman. Like, cheesy. Make him cheesy, make him goofy. It's fine.
And you can have moments of seriousness, like the one that I always reference, and it was only a matter of time before I talked about this on the podcast, but in the 1978 movie, there's this great moment where Clark is still a teenager and he's talking to Jonathan Kent, his father, on Earth, and they're having a conversation, and at the end of the conversation, Clark is like, "I'll race you to the barn, Dad," and Jonathan Kent's running, and he has a heart attack. And it's this very quiet moment. There's the music kind of goes low, and Jonathan holds his arm. He's like, "Oh no," and he falls down, and he dies. And the next scene is his funeral, and it's kind of right on the nose. It could be portrayed a little more subtly these days, but
it's still fine.
Right. The line is, the implication and the line is from Clark, "I have all these powers, and I couldn't even save him."
Yeah.
And it's this great moment where Superman realizes, I can do all these things, but you know what? I can't save everybody.
Right.
You can have moments like that, you know, to contrast to like Man of Steel, where Jonathan Kent is killed by a tornado.
Right, where Superman could have slightly ran faster than normal.
Superman could have easily saved his father. And I understand the implication in that movie is like, oh, we can't let anybody know. Right. Huge problems with that. We're not talking about Man of Steel. Let me table that. But the idea is that what makes Superman interesting, his personality, that he wants to save everyone, juxtaposed with the fact that he can't save everyone.
Right.
Like, there are going to be times where people die of natural causes, or he's just not fast enough to get there, to where people are going to die. And that means a great deal to him, and that's why he's interesting.
And that's how you get to him.
Right.
You can't, like, with Batman, you can shoot Batman and he's down. You can't take Superman down with, of course, kryptonite, but that's not readily available. So the way that they have to take Superman down is by putting others in danger.
Right, you have to prey on the fact.
On that string.
Yeah, you have to prey on the fact that he wants to save everyone. He is that Boy Scout. He is the best of the best. Like, he is this icon to other superheroes.
Right.
And it's been a really long time since a movie has come anywhere close to portraying that.
Right, and it's even the New 52 rendition of him is, I think, off point.
Yeah, it's rough.
Because we were talking about Justice League War earlier, and I even think he's kind of too brash in that even.
Yeah, and you can play that direction. The problem is that when you're going to make a movie and release it to this mass audience, I was reading this article online the other day, actually. They were talking about times where Batman has killed people in the comics.
Right.
And this guy made this really good comment. He was like, they keep making movies where they use, I think he called it the rule of the exception, to where they keep wanting to make it a movie where, you know, Batman does kill somebody, or Superman does kill somebody, or Superman is brooding, or they keep wanting to make movies where it's the exception to the character's personality
instead of embracing
who the character is. And it's okay if you want to make exceptions. Make 2 or 3 movies where Superman is the good guy,
right? And
then make an exception. Give it weight, give it impact.
Because then when we see him fall,
exactly,
from that shining light to the brooding, like, I'm pissed off and I'm just going to start pummeling,
it makes it that much more effective.
Right.
Like, we care, it matters. It's good storytelling. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And when you just make a movie where Superman's automatically brooding, we automatically don't really care about him, because not only is he brooding, he just doesn't have a personality.
No.
When you go and you kill him, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have any weight to it.
Right. When he was killed in the comics back in the 90s, when they actually full on Doomsday kills him, like, that was a big moment in American history. News channels were talking about it.
Right.
Like, it was a big, like, someone actually died.
Right. It was international news story that Superman is
died.
Dead.
They painted that giant bloody Superman symbol up there.
And sure, like, obviously it was done to sell comics.
Right. And
we get it.
He came back, like, what, 6 months later or something like that?
Yeah, it was not a lot of time. And it's not the greatest story ever written by any stretch of the imagination.
I love Max Landis's joke that it's literally punch face who dies first.
But the point is that it mattered and people cared. And we haven't seen that in any Superman film in recent memory.
And I think the biggest thing is, it's because they're scared. They're scared to give us something that's not like The Dark Knight. They're scared to give us, like, the over the top hero, like Like the ba-ba-ba-ba, like flying into the sky to go save the world. Like they're afraid to give us that because they think we're too mature for that.
Right. And we mentioned this on a previous episode too, but it's like the lesson that they took from Nolan from the Batman trilogy is be dark and gritty and brooding.
Darker is better.
Whereas the lesson they should have taken is hire good directors, hire good actors, write a good screenplay, make a good movie.
Make us care about, like, who is the guy under the mask? Why does he do what he does? With Superman, that's super easy. Just the idea that he has no ties to this planet, yet he donates his entire life to protecting it, that's a story. Like, that makes him a hero.
Right. He is an alien that is the most human of all of us.
Right.
That's the point of Superman.
So just, like, stop being scared of it. Just give us the glowing, like, smile, the little, what is that, little Jerry
Cow tap, yeah.
Yep. Just give us that. I don't even care. Bring back the red over the blue, like, suit. I don't care. Just give us something.
Who directs it?
See, that's my problem.
Not Zack Snyder?
Oh, what? Oh, that is great.
Well, I'll accept not Zack Snyder as your answer.
Not Zack Snyder. I'm actually, like, I don't know, because I would kind of want to give it to, like, I think Bryan Singer could actually, if he came back and, like, had a better chance with it, I think he could do good, but I don't know if I'd want him back. So how about the guys that directed Iron Man? You know, Shane Black or Jon Favreau, I think they have a really good blend of serious storytelling, but knowing how to take it lightly. We had Tony Stark, and they did amazing stuff with him. I think that they could easily take Superman and give us back that goofy, lighthearted Superman while not dragging us back down to the Bronze Age of comics.
Yeah, I like a Shane Black or a Jon Favreau type. Like we both of us aren't the biggest fans of Iron Man 3.
No.
But the idea, like the direction that they were trying to go in, I definitely appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it like I said, it's lighthearted but serious.
It's a good start. Like I said, I'll just take not Zack Snyder.
Yes, not Zack Snyder is the greatest answer right now.
All right, so
David Fincher's Superman.
David Fincher, definitely. Just give it to David Fincher.
Superman. I still think it would be amazing. It would still be fucking amazing.
So everyone listening, what do you think? What are some franchises or movies or whatever that you would like to see retold, rebooted, remade? Tell us what you think. You can let us know on social media at Pop Rant Radio at Facebook and Twitter. And you can also find our channel on YouTube where all of the episodes are available if that's a more convenient format. And you can also find us at Libsyn, the website where the podcast is hosted. And if you are listening to us on iTunes, please subscribe and review. The reviews really help the show get out there. We would really appreciate it. You can also email us at poprantradio@gmail.com. Tell us if you have any ideas.
And tell Zack Snyder to piss off.
Hashtag piss off Snyder.
Yep.
We'll see if that takes off.
Oh my gosh, if it does.
That would be amazing.
Piss off Snyder.
So we'd like to thank you all for listening to us rant about movies we would like to see remade, rebooted, what have you. And our little tangent on Alien.
Yes, which went probably a little too much.
It's all right. Hopefully people enjoy it.
Well, now we know what another episode we can do now is how to fix horror.
We'd like to thank Major for the theme song, as always.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir. And other than that, that's the show for this week.
Yep. Piss off, Zack Snyder.
So thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you next week.
All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.